You see that black walnut branch wiggling up there because a larch was just released through the canopy to land on that. What I'm doing this evening is cutting through an overstory of larch. This will be the last one for the evening because I'm losing light. And I'm working on the north side of this glade and going to be selectively thinning most of the larch and the spruce out of the overstory of this particular context. As I scroll up, you can see here the main canopy is a mixture of mainly larch and a little bit of spruce. They are starting to really decline, and so there's an understory that's been planted to them, and I'm understanding a way more complex understory that's possible, but they're going to need the next generation of plants. The next realm of succession is going to need this canopy release, and I think we're in a position to use these stems for really compelling projects, so it makes sense to harvest. I think they're at a size where we can go through with a draw knife and peel them and have perhaps 12-foot or 16-foot runs that could be used for internal load-bearing elements for a cabin. And if we wait a little bit longer, they're starting to pull up by the root plate and die. They're starting to get woodpeckers pecking through them, at which point they're going to be great for hugel mounds, but not really amazing for building. In fact, you can see here's one. This happened 2 years ago where the base plate gave out after a really heavy rain and the larch leaned over, and so now I've got these stems that we can go through and do something with. We probably need to get them off the ground sooner than later. But now we're going to start thinning with the actual real intent of peeling and measuring and cutting them to length with the idea of actually folding them into a cabin. Kind of fun. I can use my battery-powered chainsaw. This is an 18-inch chainsaw. It's not super powerful, but it's really pleasant to work with. It's the same battery platform that I use for my push mower with the bag on back, and also my pole saw and weed whacker. So it's been a really useful thing. Definitely not sponsored by Greenworks, but I like that 80-volt 4-amp-hour battery. It'll let me cut about 2 to 3, maybe 3 or 4 trees plus all the limbing work in one charge, and I've got 2 of them, so I can just swap back and forth. Another really nice side yield of all this is the first larch I cut, and I went through with the saw and limbed off all the side branches. Larch is not really dense with side branches when they're older, so it wasn't a lot of work. But now we can take all these branches and bring them to the property line, to the boundary line, and weave them into our deer defense line. I'm planning on pounding in some metal staves and putting some 14 gauge wire up for better deer protection in the long run. But it's an opportunity not only to get these logs that we can build with, but then also get the light that is released from them being cut out of the canopy and more material to weave in a deer defense. So it's a lot of yields here, and maybe singly the most valuable yield at this moment is with this canopy cleared, our zone 1, zone 2, high proximity to the home, easy access to the water catchment systems off of our garage. This all of a sudden becomes a really compelling place to develop a really diverse orchard. There's already some fun releases that are happening. So like right in here, this larch stem was right next to a Ben Surek blackcurrant, which I planted as cuttings a number of years ago. So they'll get more light and be more productive. And then there's also this bitternut, which a squirrel put in at some point, and this is going to get a really big boost for being exposed as the canopy element in this one part. And there's a fair bit of bitternut and shagbark hickory that squirrels have planted in and amongst these larch, because these are areas we mow, so they're planting more and more around the bases of these trees. So to some extent, the next generation of canopy is already set in motion. But we'll be adding in a fair bit of hazelnuts, Carpathian walnut, some plums, some apricots. We got red buds that are all through here. We're going to add some more of those. And then a whole bunch of ribes, different pink currants, white currants, black currants, and probably some pawpaws and some honeyberries, all in exchange for the swap out of the canopy of just 2 species that are on their way out. The light's fading quickly. Time to get some dinner and relax for the evening. I'll pick up with this tomorrow with Juan and share some more notes then. It's the next day now, and Juan and I are working together. There's Juan over there getting ready to set a rope into the next tree to bring down. And we've cleared, I think, 4 trees, maybe 5. So the glade is starting to really open roughly where he is. That canopy has been opened quite a bit. We decided we're going to leave. I'm not trying to do 100% clear cut by any stretch, but so this larch has a really nice balance to it and is quite large and beautiful, so we're going to leave that one for sure. It's really all these leaners and strange beings in there that need to go, but we need to get some rope on a few of them to guide them. They're leaning towards the road and we need some insurance. We've gone through and taken the logs to around 16 feet or longer, so we hold really nice options for what they could be used for, and they've got logs underneath them, so there's really good airflow. We're going to let them be drying down here for a while. We can go over them with a draw knife at some point. There's no rush on that. And I tried to use the chainsaw to cut really flush and low, so when we peel the bark, they're nice smooth logs. I imagine that for structures we're building, we can use these fully in the round, and maybe some of the much thicker ones can just have a chainsaw cut right through the middle, so there's a flat plane on one side and a round on the other. But by having them laid out here, organized with airflow and sun being able to get through them, I think will be really nice. So an interesting observation here. So Juan got the rope up in this tree. We're gonna get it all cinched in, so we've got that insurance. We've been using wedges too as we do the felling. You can see this larch, the one with the rope in it, the sock around a rock, tree felling professional device. It's got a strong lean towards the road, not as strong as some of the other ones, but still has that. And most of the larch and spruce in this little glade have been expressing that more and more over time. And I thought this was a worthwhile thing to see. This tree, you can see it's very much off balance and aiming towards the road. It's been taking wind load for a number of years, and with the soil getting ever increasingly rich and also more moisture being held in the soil, you can see where the root system is starting to fail. And so ultimately, guaranteedly, what will happen with this tree is one day we'll wake up to the sound of something cracking in a windstorm, and this tree will have ripped out of the ground, smashed into a hazelnut, and got bound up into other trees. And so that right there is a main reason why we're doing the felling work in advance of that, so we have control over where they fall. We can actually harvest the logs and preserve all this understory beauty that's in here. Really moving through it, another tree or two down, laying everything up as organized as can be with airflow. I really think the weight of these logs will probably be half when we return to them, and then ultimately move them out into the forest where a cabin structure will happen at some point. Nice side product of all this is all the brush, all the debris. We could certainly be making charcoal out of it. That would be an option. But weaving this material to make a boundary around the edges, in this time, it moves through the material very quickly. It's a great habitat for small creatures. Birds and rabbits really love this. And now it's thick enough in a lot of places that it should be deer-proof for a few years, which will help this glade have a better chance of getting up and running without having to fence every single pear, every apple, every tree that we put in. We'll return to this series again soon enough. We have more felling to do. We might do a couple more today, probably wrapping up relatively soon. But a fair bit more of that canopy will come out, and we'll certainly share notes in the spring as to the cast of characters that get planted in here. There's already a really great representation of bitternuts and hickory, catalpas, all sorts of other trees I mentioned before, and so we'll add in more diversity. The larch and the spruce, those are the only two species that were in the canopy here, will ultimately be replaced with at least 10 different species from very different families of trees within our lifetime, hopefully. Anyway, let us know if you got questions, comments, concerns, ideas. As per usual, we're always excited to hear from you in the comments below, and we'll share an update when an update is shareable.